Today we are joined by Matt Megel. Matt is OG Kaza. He built this uh, empire that sold 2 billion in real estate with Rob Chavez. Is there Matt? How many years have you been with Kaza now? How many years have you been an
Uh,
agent?
August of 2009. I went to Virginia Tech. They didn't do a lot of math in my classes. So we're going to say 17-ish, something like
Yeah,
that. 17
16 and
years.
a half. It'll be 17 here in August. I love it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so 16 and a half years. And today we're going to talk about exactly like how to build a real estate business. Do I even know what I am building? What are the levels there? Right. And I can't think of anyone better to join us this morning than Matt because Matt's journey, right, has been pretty incredible from where he started to where he is now. Can you give us a snapshot, Matt? I think we're going to go into this another time. We'll go real deep when we talk about building a farm, but take us back to where you were, what it was like then, and what it's like now.
Yeah, so I fell into the real estate business. Unlike a lot of my counterparts who kind of knew they wanted to do real estate, were attracted to the space. I had no interest. I just got fired from, I guess layoffs, corporate layoffs of the last company I had a W-2 at in 2008 with a baby on the way, married about 4 years at that time. And half the company was let go, and I was, on the second boat off the island, to use survivor analogy. And a buddy of mine, this is 2008, he in 2004, 5, 6 was printing money as a Remax agent, doing so well in kind of the bubble at that time. And he had a lot of people that he needed to have, be represented, helping buyers buy. They were all Spanish speaking clientele, and I happen to speak fluent Spanish, and I've always been able to sell. Most of my jobs have been sales positions prior to being self-employed. So he was like, dude, come help these people with me. I needed a way to make money. Started in real estate in October of 2008 and fell in love with it pretty quick. Really loved the business. Just realized that his particular model wasn't the right long-term fit for me. So I ended up meeting the gentleman who you were just hearing from, Rob Chavez, through a mutual friend, August of 2009, and got started. At that time in my life, I was definitely going through the hardest financial season I've ever experienced. Being, two professionals, my wife and I, one kid, a second one arriving in this, 4 year period of time. And the two of us together working full time, we're not making $50,000 a year combined in Northern Virginia, and it was brutal. And so I, started with Rob in that kind of stand from in that framework and that time of my life with about $40,000 of negative net worth. And being part of Kaza, being part of Grid and everything that we talk about now in Tactical Tuesday, was able to take myself from that point in 2009 all the way up to 2013, 4 years later, and I got to zero. Let's go. I am net worth $0. Super excited about that. But I bought my first house in 2013. Yada, yada, yada. Fast forward, continuing to build a real estate business, continuing to go on the wealth journey with, Kaza and Grid. We were able to purchase 7 properties. One is my primary residence, 5 long-term rentals, one short-term rental at a kind of second home slash short-term rental at Lake Anna that we really love and enjoy a lot. And then I'm currently under contract to buy my first commercial property, delving into buying a office condo in Gainesville here, 20155. In case you're asking, that's the zip code for where I live and work and play and invest a lot of my business. And so kind of been able to go on that wealth journey now. Yeah, that's my story. I'm sticking with it.
I love it. Right, negative 40,000. Right, just in debt. Matt has an incredible story to. Hey, I've got 7 properties right now, and I'm going to buy a commercial property to house my business and get a beautiful family. Been married to your wife how long now, Matt?
21 years.
Right,
21
Matt's
years,
got
three
it.
daughters, a senior in high school, freshman in high school, and a fifth grader finishing her last year at elementary school this year.
Good.
So
And I wanted to share that just because, right, the point of doing this thing, right, is to build a life worth living. When I
Yeah.
first started at about the same time as you, Matt, I remember going to a conference in '07. It was one of those real estate sales conferences. There was the guy, Joe Stumpf. And I was watching people that seem so old now. I'm catching up to them. They're probably 50, right? But when you're 23, that seems, like you can't even imagine. And crying because they couldn't imagine taking off time on a weekend that they would lose, their whole business was built upon being highly responsive and reactive to their clients and they had no life and they were making maybe they're making six figures at the time but they just were totally scared that if they didn't answer the phone, they didn't work nights, they didn't work weekends, right? That they wouldn't have a life worth living. It really resonated with me from the very beginning of like, I know I don't want that, right?
Yeah.
I know I don't want to be crying because I feel trapped by the business that I have. So, Matt, why is this topic important to you? Because I love it. Because I was going to ask Matt, hey, Matt, do you want to talk about farming? Do you want to talk about these birthday videos? Do you want to do? Do you want to talk about like some of the like your tactics? He's a great negotiator, or hey, I've seen sometimes you've listed 40% of your farm. And he said, well, we should have a conversation, right, about what am I even building? Like what is the job even like? What am I even doing as a real estate agent? And so why was that important to you, Matt?
Yeah. I think one, I love what you guys do with Tactical Tuesday. I love hearing about different things people have gone deep on to move their business forward in a very practical way so that I can show up once a week, listen to different ideas. But man, why didn't I think about that? I'm already doing 50% of that already. If I just did the other 50%, I could have this additional source of opportunity or revenue, etc. However, it took me about 15 years in real estate to come to even understand what I'm going to try and communicate this morning here in the next 20, 30 minutes about like, what am I even building? Because prior to having created and understood like this simple framework, I call it the 7 components to a real estate business. And I'm going to share my screen here in a little bit and walk you guys through it. But prior to understanding that, all ideas that came across my, you know, mine. All ideas that I was hearing in conferences, hearing in things like this where people are talking about what they're doing, they all seemed great. And I would be running around trying this thing and trying that thing, and we're going to start doing this, and maybe we add this on. And it felt very, in my own mind, very kind of chaotic. Like all ideas sound like good ideas, but the question still remained like, what should I be focusing on? Right.
You
Um,
needed a filter.
a filter and excuse me, I'm gonna mute and just cough 1 second here. I don't want to cough in every.
No, that's okay. So right, hey, like hey, all this sounds good. Maybe I should chase this rabbit. Maybe I should chase that rabbit. These guys are having success. If Aaron can do that, maybe I could do that, right? And
100%.
it can be very confusing, right?
Yes. And so I needed to kind of dumb it down and make it simple enough that I could say, okay, what really is my business? And what is a tactic that I could use to advance my business? But they are different. My business is my business. A tactic is something I could use to hopefully enhance my business. And so this is a framework that I've played with for the last 2, 3 years. And um, as much as I think that it's a pretty a complete, cohesive explanation of what you're actually building as a real estate agent, trying to build a business and not just be on what we refer to as the transaction treadmill. I like for you guys to even poke holes in it and tell me if there is an eighth thing that somehow I missed in this framework of the 7 things. I've asked lots of people. Nobody's been able to. Everything that people say, well, what about this? I tend to find that it falls into one of these 7 categories as opposed to actually creating an eighth. But I just want to kind of go through this so that when if I come back and talk about geographic farming or other people that might be part of this Tactical Tuesday and come in, that you guys can say like, oh, okay, this guy's talking about that one of the 7 elements, or maybe he's talking about 2 of those 7 elements, or maybe he's talking about all 3 of these, but it can start fitting into a framework that is a complete framework so you actually know when somebody's talking, what part of the business they're working on, what part of what you're building couldn't you apply this to, if that makes sense?
I love that. So you got permission. We're going to ask Matt some questions. Last thing, just so what does your business look like? So one question I didn't ask you. Give me some kind of a framework for units. What does a typical year look like for you in your business, Matt?
Yeah, so last year, if I go back, let's say like over the last 5 years, and doing a GCI as one of the metrics, I don't happen to have the transaction count or volume is not something that I pay a ton of attention to. I do, but I don't have it memorized. In the pandemic, when everybody was, interest rates were at 2 and 3%. For 2 years in a row, our team, this is 2021 and 22, I believe, we did through three agents, then four agents. We did a 1.25 million in terms of gross commission income for 21 and 22. After the
Hmm.
crazy run was over, we retreated a little bit, and for 2 years we did about $750,000 in GCI as a team. And last
Hmm.
year, in rebounding back from kind of the lull of 23 and 24, at least in what we experienced, we were just over $1,050,000 in GCI. And our goal for this year is to be back at that 1.25 without a pandemic wind at our back to be able to kind
Sure.
of boost our business. So, somewhere in the 50 to 75 units kind of range in the Northern Virginia area based on price point. Yeah, I
No,
think
it's very helpful. So I just want to talk about when we talk about building a business, what does that actually look like, right? We've got some key performance indicators. We're closing our books out every single month. Matt, I don't know if you want to share a screen or not. We've
yep, yep. I'm
got
going to share my
show
screen right
permission if you
now.
do. Let's
Yep.
talk about this framework. Where do we so
Okay. Make
start
sure that
from the beginning? The seven components. I love this. All right,
we can
what's
see
number
this.
one? How am I orienting myself here if I'm sitting down today?
And give me just 1 second to get my visuals right. Okay, cool. You guys are seeing the seven components of the real estate business, correct?
Yep,
All right, good. I got to drag you guys over to my other monitor just so I can see your lovely faces. Okay.
not a problem at all. Love it.
So the seven components to the real estate business, I'm going to put them up here on the screen, and then I'm going to go through each one of them individually and kind of use an analogy, a simple analogy, almost a cartoonish analogy of having a factory, right? When you're a kid, you watch the cartoons and you're like, oh, you've got a factory, and that factory is producing one widget every minute coming out the door. Kind of think about that type of cartoonish, analogy as we go through this.
An
Um,
assembly line, right?
an assembly line. Yeah, great.
Yep.
Exactly. Um, so the seven components that I believe make up a full real estate business. And by the way, when I say a real estate business, I don't mean a self-employed person that just happens to sell real estate, right? Somebody who owns their own job. I'm talking about something like a casa, right? Something like you can walk away from that business and it continues to produce ongoing income. You could be totally out of the business and a silent owner, and that business is a real business, right? You'll see as we kind of go through these seven steps one at a time that the earliest steps are the first, the most basic building block of the business, all the way up to, hey, I've stepped out of this. Other people are running the business, and I can kind of go do what I want to do with my life. So instead of thinking about it as just a sales job, like a real business, right?
Rich dad, poor dad quadrant, right? Getting to the
Yeah,
business owner section, not the practitioner. Love it.
absolutely. So the first step is quality representation. We'll call that the widget. All right, we'll come back and explain what I mean by that. The second element is the size of your business slash database. The third element is the speed of your business slash contacts and what those are. Number four is consistently delivering value. Explain what I mean by that. Number five is the least sexy and exciting is the administration and compliance element of a business.
Hmm.
Number six is talent acquisition. And finally, number seven is leadership. Okay. And we'll talk about this step by step so you guys can kind of build this analogy in your minds and know, hey, whenever I'm hearing anybody on stage or any sort of thing talk about what they're doing that's really awesome, you'll know which of those seven steps or which multiple of those seven steps they're talking about and be able to decide based on where you're at in your business and where you want to go. Should I apply this now or is this not for me right now? I mean, you understand how valuable it is to even just know, like, hey, that guy's awesome. That guy's doing some really cool stuff. That's not for me right now. That's
Hmm.
such a major time saver instead of getting sucked into everything all the time, which was certainly me, Jojo, the idiot circus boy running around chasing shiny objects for the first 5 years of my business, right? Like, hold on, that's not for me. Okay. So your business is a factory. Let's use this kind of a thing, assembly line. And the product, as a real estate agent, the product that your business actually creates on said assembly line is quality representation. Okay? You need to know how to help buyers buy, sellers sell, and investors invest. Right? This is a skill set that over time you need to develop the craft, the understanding of how to effectively shepherd and get results for each one of these three different clients that you may be working with, right? And I find like a lot of times people are stuck on this level. This is the most exciting thing they talk about. Like, hey man, you can do this to kind of help your buyer, you can do this to help your seller. But if you're really wanting to run a real estate business, you need about 18 months to maybe 36 months to just get this figured out. Once you know how to help a buyer, how to help a seller, how to help an investor, lock it in, yeah, iterate over time, little things as the industry changes, but you don't need to relearn this. Just learn how to be a great agent and have that locked down. But that is the widget, that is the product. If you think about a factory that makes chairs, their widget is a chair. Your factory is an agent factory, your widget is quality representation. Follow me so far?
So that's my fiduciary obligation, right? I'm putting highest duty recognized under the law. I've got to put your needs above my own, Matt, right? And represent you competently, skillfully, successfully. Yeah, love it.
Yes.
That's what we're selling.
And get it down once and you can kind of forget about it. Like, not forget about it, but like you can lock that in. You don't have to be doing this, working on this forever. Okay. This is a skill you can develop and master. Second, oh, sorry, sorry, that's the same slide. The only thing that we didn't mention on here is like, don't get confused. Results do matter. The quality of the chair on a chair factory is really important to the success of that business, right? You producing results that your clients need, want, have hired you for, that is your product. Results do matter. People aren't really paying you for your personality. Now, should you leverage your personality in order to make your clients happy and enjoy? Yeah, absolutely. But the results are what they're paying you for. So let's not get confused about that, right?
Hmm.
Okay. The second element of your business is the size of your business. Okay. I like to use the analogy of like, if this factory has a foundation, the bigger and the wider the foundation of that factory is, the larger the factory can possibly be. Well, how do we determine the size of the foundation of this factory? On how many full bricks you have in the foundation of the factory. What is a full brick? And this is, we always talk about your business is your database. So a full brick in this example is a person, right? A full brick is a human being that knows you are a real estate agent. A person in your database is a brick. Let me actually give a slight distinction of terms. There is a partial brick and a full brick. Okay, a partial brick is somebody who you happen to know. You know their name and you know their email address, or you know their name and their phone number, or you know their name and their physical address. But a full brick is composed of six different elements, okay? Their full name, their physical address, their email address, their phone number. They have some sort of market report and talk about, delivering to them what their property's value is if they have a physical address, a market report coming on a regular basis. And they're also on some sort of ongoing 36 touch program campaign. We just put here like a 36 touch tag in your database. But a couple of elements that are really important here is you can't have a business if you don't know where your database is, right? It's got to be an organized, comprehensive
Hmm.
place. We, in our industry, oftentimes use client relationship managers, CRMs. You've got Boomtown and Brivity and Follow Up Boss. It doesn't matter which one, but some sort of tool whereby you can track how many partial bricks you have and how many full bricks you have. Each brick in this analogy could be considered a little brick in the foundation of this factory. If you've got 4 bricks, your factory is going to sit in the palm of your hand, right? If you've got 40,000 bricks, you could have one, 10,000 square foot factory or whatever, 100,000 square foot factory, depending on how many bricks you have in the foundation of your business. I will say this though, like Everybody that goes into your database goes in at, they may not be full bricks, right? The exercise, one of the second exercise, the exercise in the second element is to go from somebody that you just have their name and phone number and be able to figure out how to add some value to them whereby they want to give you their physical address or their email address. They are interested in you delivering a market report to them to go from a partial brick to a full brick. But there are 6 sides to a brick. There are 6 elements to being a full brick, but that determines the size of your business. On the same page with me, Justin, any questions on that?
Do you have, are you going to talk about what my target might be if I'm new? How many bricks?
Yeah, I mean, I will say this: if you've been, yes, I will answer that. If you've been living out of your cell phone, one of the ways that you can kind of tell at least how many bricks, whether partial or full, you have on an iPhone at least, is you go to your contacts, you scroll all the way down to the bottom, and you just look at the number of contacts that are in your phone, and that's a good place to start about how many bricks you have, right? But you go and look at your Gmail, your old personal Gmail contact list, and you look at all these different things, and you can start having a relatively large number of bricks. If you've been on the planet for more than 16 years, you should have hundreds of bricks, just people that you've passed by in life.
Hmm.
So when we have somebody joining the team, the first goal for somebody is to have 500 full bricks as soon as possible. Many people can actually join the real estate space with 500 full bricks, right? Past coworkers, schoolmates, friends, family, whatever it might be. But 500 is like a starting point. Then
Okay.
can we get to 1,000, 15, 2,000, and on from there?
Love it. Quality representation. Then I need to have a database, and the size of my database is going to determine the size of my business. What's next, Matt?
The speed of your business. All right, so we've got we've got a widget, a product, the representation widget. We've got the size of our business. But let's say you even have, 10,000 full bricks in the foundation of your factory, but you're only making one widget a quarter. Your profitability is still not going to be very high. So there's a third element, which is the speed of your business. How does one determine the speed of their business? Based on the number of contacts they are making on a weekly basis. You'd kind of consider this like your speedometer on your car, how many of these, how fast the assembly line is moving in your factory. What is a contact? A defined contact is a two-way communication that's at least real estate relevant. It doesn't have to necessarily be, do you want to buy a house? Do you want to sell a house? Though that's certainly perfectly fine. But it can be like they know you're a real estate agent. You've helped them in the past. You're talking about how life is going, asking them if they've got any friends that might be thinking about, a move this year, whatever it might be. But it's a two-way conversation, not spam email, not spam texts. They at least are responding. But it can be through any different communication method. It could be on the phone, could be DMs and social media, could be text messages, could be email, whatever, doesn't really matter. But it is two-way and it is communication. A minimum standard for a healthy business in this is at least 50 contacts a week. Break it down, you work 5 days a week, it's 10 contacts a day. And that's just kind of like the minimum for a healthy business. You want to go faster? You want those widgets to start flying off the assembly line? Let's get it to 20 contacts a day and 100 contacts a week. Let's get it to 30 contacts a day, 150 contacts a week. You can determine how fast your assembly line is pushing out product based on how many contacts you're having on a weekly basis.
Love it.
Okay.
Simple, simple, easy math, right? 10 contacts a day.
Now, I'm sure I'm not surprising anybody with this revelation of, oh my gosh, this is really what business is. No, but this is where it started helping me a lot. Is if I only focus on these first three, I'm still on the transaction treadmill. And once again, you need to do that. You talked about it earlier. Your real estate business is your cash machine so that you can have enough money to take care of, first of all, your personal expenses, pay your taxes, hopefully give some money away, take care of your personal expenses, and then have something left over to start fueling your wealth journey, right? These are super important to have that cash machine up and running. But if this is all you ever focus on, you are on the transaction treadmill. And as soon as you stop working, the treadmill stops and everything crashes to a screeching halt, if that makes sense, right? You got to be able to do these, but you've developed no consistent, outside of your own personal effort, you can develop no consistent reoccurring business. Okay.
Yeah.
However, there's an important note here before we go on to number four. Tracking is essential. You cannot improve what you don't measure. Okay. If you don't know how many bricks are in the foundation of your business, if you don't know how many contacts you're having on a weekly basis, you're not a real business owner yet. That's okay. All right. I was not a real business owner for a long, long time. I didn't track this stuff. I just did it. I was very entrepreneurial and not purposeful. And so I wasn't tracking this stuff. I was just doing it. And yeah, results would come. But the character trait of a real business owner is to track things and make some incremental ongoing improvement in the process. So I'm going to encourage everybody, as I had to encourage myself, to like, look, if you want it to get better, you got to first have the discipline of tracking it. Do I want AI to step into my life and just track everything and I never have to think about it? Yes. Is that coming? Maybe. Until then, I'm not waiting. You have to be able to say, how many bricks are in my database? How many contacts did I have last week? What's it going to be
Hmm.
this week and going forward? Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. What I always think about, Matt, is my grandma Munoz. My grandpa was a patriarch, right? Started out in Brooklyn, ends up retiring as like a vice president in Johnson and Johnson, worked his way up, big family, took care of everyone. My grandma had a big recipe book, and everybody went in there, like a recipe box, right? And everybody had index cards, and she would go buy birthday cards and Christmas cards and for everybody. So at the beginning of the month, they would all go out. She'd mail out probably 20 a month. So she had a system, right, for loving on us consistently. I did not feel less loved, because my Grammy had a system, right, to get this out for everyone and never missed any grandkids, cousins, graduations, right? She
Yeah.
had an address book and she had a recipe. Like, so having a system, right, to be intentional about showing that you care about people is not a new concept. I love this.
And the reason why I want to make this kind of cut right here before we go into the four, five, six, and seven is because if you're not willing to do all seven, let's just admit we're never going to have a real estate business. We can have a sales job that we own, which is cool, and lots of people do. When I, having been, working with Rob and Kaza for 16, 17 years, whatever, I would be misrepresenting reality if I didn't say that periodically people come to me and I've even had internal thoughts like, hey man, could I go do this on my own? I've developed the skills. I know kind of what needs to be done in order to run a real business. Why am I still part of an organization? Why don't I start my own organization? Frankly, when people that are considering joining Kaza call me and talk to me about should they join Kaza, it's the number one question people ask. Matt, you've been doing this for a really long time. Why wouldn't you go do this on your own? And the answer is, I don't want to do these next four things. I'm okay doing some of them, but I don't want to do all of them. And if I'm just being honest with myself, if I'm not willing to do all seven things, I don't want to go out and do it on my own. I want the support. I want to be part of an organization that gives me a lot of leverage around these next four things. Okay. And I say that just for those of you who are here that are part of a team or considering being part of a team or on your own. Now you can make some decisions about like, hold on a second. If I got to do these other four things, do these make me come alive? Do these give me energy or do these take my energy? If I want a real business and these don't give me energy, maybe I need to find a way to get these done, be part of something that's doing this or at least providing a lot of leverage to help me do this. Does that make sense, Jay?
Makes perfect sense, man.
So number four is consistently delivering value. Okay. The people that are in your database, the bricks in the foundation of your company and you're making these contacts, need to be getting value from you on a very regular basis. Obviously, the Millionaire Real Estate Agent coined the term the 33 touch program. That doesn't divide really great by 12 months. So the 36 touch program has got three extra touches, but it's basically making sure that the people that are in your database are extracting value from you on a regular basis. Rob often talks about, and this is not an exclusive list, but that you can make people money, you can save people money, you can make people smarter, you can help people have fun. There's ways that you can be adding value to people's lives. Okay. So a 36 touch program is an essential element to go from being a sales job owner to being a real business owner. And I'll just give my kind of 36 touch program that, is, leveraged heavily through, the team that I'm a part of here, Kaza, is 24 emails a year, two per month, 12 market reports, to people who own property, whose physical address I have, right? And they're going to get a monthly report. Four quarterly events. Every quarter, I do something to stay in community and stay in contact with my database. Calls, gifts, other personal touches. You mentioned earlier my birthday videos. That's a simple little touch that's part of my 36 touch. And when I actually do the math, my 36 touch program is more like a 44 or what, I don't know, but like it's well over 36. But still, the people that are part of my world are getting consistent value. I'm delivering consistent value to them in a myriad of different ways to be always part of owning their mind share about who's the real estate agent they can talk to. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Now, this
What I
is
just
a,
got, we just had someone ask in the comments, and I think what the real asking is this. He said, "How do I add people to the database? I only have 20 contacts in my phone. Six of them are real estate, right?"
yep.
So starting from I have more questions because about uh, uh, you know your circumstances where you only have 20 contacts. That might be the lowest number I think I've heard in my 20 years. And that they live someplace else. But how do I deliver value? I'm brand new. I don't know. I probably don't believe in my ability to deliver value. So how am I meeting people, Matt?
Well, so let me do this. That's a great question, but
Want to
let
come
me
back
go
to it?
through these last and let me come back to it and then we'll hit them
Perfect.
all out.
So
And people that want to bounce at the time, they can bounce and we can stick around and chat with people who got
love
questions.
it. So
Okay.
36 touch, just like, hey, if you're in my database, you're consistently receiving value, right? And just these
Yes.
are high quality, like, oh, I want to read that. That's interesting. You're educating me about the market. You're telling me what's happening. You're giving me something to kind of think about in the rhythm of the year and how that relates to my home or real estate, right? And then you're consistently loving on me, checking on me, letting me know what's happening. I built a system so like I don't forget to stay in touch with you, right?
And let me not, I want to emphasize that this is a heavy lift, guys. This is not an easy lift. If you had to write one email every 2 weeks, delivering value to people, not repeating content, figuring out what you're going to say, like this is a heavy lift. One of the primary reasons that I want to be part of a team is because I don't want to figure this out, right? But I know it's absolutely essential. And if you're a team leader, and so far what you've developed for the people that are part of your organization is just these first three, congrats. But still, you do not have a business. People are joining your organization and they need help with this heavy lift. They need to figure out how can I be valuable to my clients without spending all day, all the time figuring out what I'm going to say in an email or what my event should be, or et cetera, et cetera. So this is a
Mhm.
no joke heavy lift, but it's absolutely essential. Okay.
Yep.
Number five, and we're going to go a little faster in these last three just to kind of knock them out, and then we can talk about anything. The least enjoyable part of it, at least for me, is the administration and compliance. But if you do not do this, you will destroy your business. What kinds of things fall into administration and compliance? Things like bookkeeping, taxes, insurance, legal coverage, all those kinds of, yes, your E&O insurance at your brokerage should have some level of coverage, but it might not be complete, like for making sure that your business is not going to be torpedoed. But this is the stuff that like I have the absolute least amount of interest in figuring out. But I also am not interested in getting 5, 6, 10 years down the road, having something happen that destroys my business because I wasn't having proper protection and a proper foundation and track. It's so funny when we meet with agents to talk to them about their business. One of the surefire ways for for them to be exposed as not really having a business but having a sales job they own is, hey man, what's your rhythm of closing your books on your business and looking at your profit and loss statement? And you just hear the crickets start chirping. Nobody's doing this.
For speaking of that, what's the math when I'm running my business on what, my cost of the three categories is I'm looking at a P&L.
Yeah. A lot of it has to do with the type of team that you're running, right? If you're a small mom and pop and you got one buyer agent that's part of it, you can have radically different percentages than if you've got a 15 agent team and you're providing lots of overhead support, and so on and so forth. But a good rule of thumb, going back to the MREA, Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, is a 50% cost of sale, 20%, no more than 20% in expenses, and having a 30% profit margin. You can do better than that. The MREA actually has a 40% profit margin. They say 30, 30, 40. That hasn't been consistently accomplished in some of the even best producing teams that I've kind of come across. So a 50% in cost of sale, 20% in expenses, and 30% in profit is attainable. It's done. I think Rob was even commenting on here that, Casa Gainesville is more like a 35% profit margin pretty consistently. So you can do better than that, but that's a good metric to go for.
No, I love it. And cost of goods sold is just like for us, it's what I pay myself as commission. So my
Yeah.
active income, right? The simple way to start building a business is paying yourself being for the work that you're doing. If that's the step one of like, if I know if I'm doing that, I am creating something where I could afford event. I'm building a business. It's forcing me to be profitable, where I could hire Christian or I could hire Corey or someone to come join the business, right? Because I built it in a way where it's like, cool. Nope, there is money set aside for this task. I haven't built a business that only works, Matt, right? Because I work for free.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Yep. So, okay, administration and
So
compliance, I think we've got that covered. Can't overestimate, though. That is where all your profit is made, y'all. All
yeah.
your profit is made on the operations side. It's
Correct.
very
Expense
easy to find
management.
good salespeople, finding amazing administrators are executing this at a high level. If you look at our industry, just go start paying attention. How many amazing directors of operations are there versus how many charismatic salespeople? It's a 10 to 1, very conservative ratio, probably more like 30 to 1. Yeah.
And just like number four, this is a very heavy lift. This can be a full-time stinking job trying to make sure that you're really up to speed on stuff. Things changes, you got to change along with it, etc. But anyway, that's five. Number six, talent acquisition, attracting people into your world that want to be part of what you're building. And this is a whole other skill set that has nothing to do with your widget, with your factory size, with your content. Like this is another skill set that needs to be developed. I'm not going to go too long in here. I want to stay kind of on track with time and answer some questions. But in the Keller Williams language that we're all many of us are familiar with, this is like recruit select element of the KW model. And then finally, number seven is the leadership element, the train, lead, and motivate element of the RSTLM language, if you're familiar from KW. But training people, leading people, motivating people, this is a whole nother thing. So what I want to kind of go back and show you all seven of them on the screen at the same time is like quality representation is what we talk about. Hey, how do you be a good real estate agent? The market's shifting. What are we going to do to kind of represent buyers really well? Um, that's something you got to get done. But ultimately, the size of your business is based on how many people are in your database. The speed of your business is based on how many contacts. Those are what we think about when we're like, I'm an agent. I can help people. I've got people and I talk to people. Cool. The next four, each one of them is a full-time stinking job and skill set in and of themselves. That to be a solo agent, you kind of can't do all of these, right? Even in the definition of talent acquisition and leadership, there's going to be other people that are part of your world. Unless you happen to be the one that's spending all of your time delivering consistent value and making sure you still have time to be in compliance and close your books and be your own CPA and bookkeeper, et cetera, et cetera. Like this is too big for any one person. So my wrap up will be this, and then happy to answer any questions. When I'm trying to decide, hey, do I want to do this all on my own or do I want to be part of a larger organization? This is what I come back to. And at best, I find that I enjoy two to three of these. I don't enjoy the majority. I don't want to really do it. And when I sit down with somebody who's thinking about doing it on their own or being part of an organization, this is what I show them and say, hey, do you love all of these? And if not, you got a decision to make. You're either going to have a job that you own, a sales job you own, which is fine, and you can make a good deal of money having a sales job that you own. But let's just be honest, it's not a business. Or you need to join somebody who's going to do some of those seven things that you're not particularly interested in doing as leverage so that you can focus on what you enjoy and not focus on trying to do everything. And that clarity for me has been really helpful. Second and final point is now, whenever I hear anybody talking about any particular tactic that they're using, I'm like, oh, is this a brick building tactic? Is this a contacts tactic? Is this a delivering a value approach? Is this something you've done in mastering your administration and compliance? Are we talking about recruiting and selecting people? Are we talking about leadership? And it makes the whole thing like, okay, cool. That's just one of the, which of the seven, or maybe multiple of the seven we're talking about. So that I can kind of know, hey, is this something I'm working on right now or not? Is this just a good idea for down
Mhm.
the road, or should I employ this? Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. The way I think about this always is being an entrepreneur. It's I'm in space or I'm scuba diving, right? Like I could orienting myself is the biggest challenge because I can move in any direction at any time, right? I'm not like stuck on this fixed path. So it's so confusing sometimes of I can get so lost. That's where you see it's not this linear path, right, Matt, of like, oh man, like is this a slow season in the business? Right? We had this happen, Matt. Like you're a database-based guy. When you went off during COVID, when you overfish the farm, it equalizes, right? When a huge percentage of your database takes advantage of 3% interest rates, they're not moving next year. And that's just the math of like having a big database. And so, right, even you can be doing this
Yeah,
a long time and being like, man, am I off? Is it the market? Am I doing everything I can? Like, right, how do I orient myself towards what I'm doing? Because if I don't do this, it's very subtle. The difference between making 30 contacts a week and 50 contacts a week or 40 and 50 over a 15-year career, we're playing like a just a slow accrual contact game, right? It's about consistency. And so if I don't have some of those and I don't have a way to track some of those, it becomes so very hard because I don't know about you, Matt, like the benchmark for us is so often based off of production. I'm a great agent because everyone answered the phone before noon today. I'm a great agent because Corey decided he wants to move this week and I was able to successfully represent him,
yeah,
right? I'm
yeah,
attached to the outcomes in my sales job and not to the process. So having some of this lets me fall in love with the process. Hey, did I have 50 really good intentional conversations this week with people?
yeah.
Awesome. If I'm doing that, right, and I am a quality agent representing people, it should work out. Like I'm making positive, right? I'm making positive progress. Who's got some questions? We can go really deep on this. There's two things that came up. Lauren said her biggest challenge right now in the business is energy management, which I think could be very relevant to what you talked about, Matt. Which are those seven things? Like, am I spending time on things I hate doing? And then we had another question about just how do I build, right, into meeting people and creating. I think that's a great one for the database. That is confusing of like, what would I do? Um,
Yeah, I mean, Samuel had that question. I saw that you had, answered it exactly how I was going to answer it in terms of
okay,
like there's
good.
only three things you can do to add bricks to your database, add bricks to the foundation of your factory. And that is prospecting, networking, or marketing, right? Prospecting is one-on-one, voice to voice, belly to belly, whatever it might be, but you're actively reaching out to people, most of which you don't know, right? Prospecting, you're talking to people you don't yet know. Two, marketing, one to many communications where you're sending a message out to people that you don't know, but it's not one to one, it's one to many. And then networking, right? You're meeting with people face to face, probably that you do know, and finding out who else they might know, or showing up where there's a bunch of people that are intending to meet folks, in person, or you can do virtual networking. A lot of our social networking is done that way. But that's the only way that you can do it. There's a billion different tactics you can use, right? Open houses to door knocking to expireds withdrawals, circle prospecting. You can pick, but it's going to fall into one of those three categories.
Cherie's got a, I love that. Cherie's got a question.
Hey, yeah, y'all can hear me. Hi, good morning. First of
I
all,
sure
great
can.
presentation, Matt. Gave me a lot to think about. One thing you didn't mention, you were talking about somebody who doesn't like to do all seven things. I didn't hear you mention that they could just throw money at it and hire out the parts that they don't like. And I wanted to get your thought process around that. Like, why not just hire the compliance person and hire and then just, hopefully
No,
that makes sense.
absolutely. And I think you can certainly pay others to do what has to be done that you don't want to do or that doesn't give you energy. However, you're still going to own that part of the business, meaning you're still going to be hiring different people, and that guy didn't do it right. And so you got to replace that person with the new person. And that guy's got a little bit better than that person, but I got to find somebody else to do it, right? When, as part of Kaza, one of the reasons why I like that is if we need a better bookkeeper to make sure that our books are being closed, hey, Kaza, go find a new bookkeeper. Right? Like that's your responsibility to deliver that for me, or market, whatever it might be that I don't want to, these emails that are going out every twice a month. Can we improve this? And I have somebody that I'm holding responsible to find to helping get one of those seven elements up and running. Otherwise, you can do it, but it's still your job to find that person, manage that person, lead that person, etc.
So I think when I hear that tree, I'm thinking about when people talk about emotional labor in the house, like who's the one that's keeping track of the appointments and what are we doing for dinner and all that other stuff, right? The things that someone's got to have the mental load of watching all those pots in the business. And Matt saying, hey, for me, the mental load of, oh God, I've got to hold this person accountable to all of these items. Um, Even with hiring feels a little overwhelming, which might get into the question. Mario had a question about expenses. Mario, what specifically do you want to know about expenses? We're going off of, the conversation started with, if everyone has read it, I think The Millionaire Real Estate Agent. We all came out of a Keller Williams ecosystem. Keller Williams has some of the best training and models in the country. And so a lot of that stuff is pretty foundational how we think about it. So I know the foundation for us was looking at the MREA, looking at their budget model, their economic model, the lead generation model. That's where we started kind of the framework for how to run a business. What do you want to talk about in terms of expenses?
Good morning, guys.
Good
Thanks for all the
morning.
information. First time participating. I know Rob from meetings, but anyhow, in terms of splits, I just wanted you to go over again what you briefly summarized 80, or you said something about 50, 20, 30. How those are, what model do you use basically in simple terms?
So, couple things I can say. Going back to what I was referring to in terms of some benchmarks, to kind of know that your profit and loss statement on a monthly or quarterly or annual basis, right? You can kind of look at it through a couple different lenses, is healthy. It really does make sure that you are controlling expenses. And I'm using that as a little bit more generically, but in controlling the costs of doing business, let's say, to retain a healthy amount of profit in a business like ours. And there are some benchmarks across the industry that we, kind of look at and see who's doing it well and who's, what we want to avoid is having a bunch of really puffed up, exciting awards being won and transaction count being good and not making any money. All right. So what I was saying is cost of sale is the, in terms of how much money is paid to either yourself or to other members of your team for closing the business, for doing the business representation. And you need, in order to have a real business that's delivering real value consistently, you can't have cost of sale higher than 50%. You can only be losing 50% of GCI to either your own active income or paying other agents that are closing the business as part of it. So you can kind of translate that to different levels of split. But if it exceeds 50%, you start choking the business out and it stops being able to be scalable, et cetera. Expenses under the so that's cost of sale. Under the expense category would be things like how much does it cost to put a sign in the yard, photography, transaction management services, doing that marketing campaign to get some new leads in, etc. That should be 20% or less of GCI, which if you subtract out cost of sale and expenses at 50 and 20% respectively, you're going to be left over with 30% profit margin, right? That allows you to run the business, expand the business, have other, continue to scale out, as well as take care of your own self and your own family off of that, right? But there's a billion different ways of kind of doing the idea of a split. I would just say keep it so that when you look at what it costs in cost of sale, it's 50% or less, and you'll be able to have the ability to scale and take care of your people well.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Great.
No, I love it. And I'm going to expand a little bit. When we're having this conversation, the way I was taught this conversation was, hey, Matt, let's just have a conversation about how the real estate industry works. The difference between teams and brokerages. And we ran through that where if you're a solo agent and you own all of those responsibilities, you can have a really high level of quote unquote profit, right, in your business. Like I can see like very minimal expenses. Maybe I'm sphere based. I came here from another industry. I do all of that. I'm in a place that has kind of a high average price point. And when I look at my math, I'm like, wow, I keep 70% of every dollar that comes in the door or something, right? So when we look at brokerages, but as soon as I get leverage, I drop down to those like 50, 30, 20 numbers, like those 30, 30, 40 numbers, let's say. As soon as I get any amount of leverage, I hire a transaction coordinator, I hire an assistant, like some money starts going out the door, I start having real expenses, right? When I'm looking at it overall, if I hear a number that's 70% or above that I'm keeping, that's really a brokerage level model, right? The brokerage was providing some guardrails, some compliance, maybe some basic elements of those seven things that we talked about, right? The the math on it, when you look at the industry, big picture, when we look at our contemporaries that are doing hundreds or thousands of units to be able to deliver full scale administrative support or to do a 36 touch, those client events, et cetera, at a high level, or have professional marketing, et cetera, at a high level, or someone that's licensed and trained helping with transactions at a high level, like then the math gets down to what we're talking about. And the distinction that Rob always shared with me, Matt, which I like, is just like, hey, Matt, if I'm talking to someone that has a team is not just leads. A team is they have a playbook, right? The brokerage is like the NFL, and the team is like the Commanders, right? Can you not hear me? Mario says
I
he
hear
can't hear
you.
me.
I can hear you still.
Yeah, sorry, Mario. I don't know what's happening on your end. Um, So the team has a playbook, right? Here at Kaza, our playbook is we are an event-driven team that focuses on building relationships with multi-transactional clients, specifically landlords. We do this by taking our agents on a wealth journey, and they in turn take their clients on a wealth journey. So everyone I'm talking to, I am planting a seed that they should be a multi-transactional client, right? Because everybody should be investing in real estate. And that's how we hit the sweet spot of we talk a lot to the investor or the investing market while being highly sphere-based and repeat business-based. It is, hey, Matt, like you might not think of yourself as an investor. It's impossible to retire without doing some investing. Let's talk about the journey that we're gonna go on. How can I help you do what I've been able to do, right? In Matt's case now, Matt, what is that? How much equity are you seeing? This is my favorite number. You're making payments right now. You've owned some properties for a while, so now stuff's going towards principal. On your net worth, how much is your net worth growing consistently? You shared something before, and I loved it about like,
Yeah. So just one number that's kind of a cool number is the principal reduction that's happening automatically, meaning like it's the most passive element of this. My tenants are paying for each of these mortgages. How much is the mortgage going down kind of on autopilot, which would be regardless of what happens with appreciation, regardless of what happens with anything else, this is how much it goes up simply by reducing debt, right? It's currently at 47.39 a month. That doesn't count, cash flow, doesn't count appreciation, doesn't count anything. It's just how much is getting paid off in debt every month by other people, if that makes sense.
That's that's a beautiful number. That's the name of the game, right? Do this thing so I can build active income, so I can invest in assets, so I can hold them long term. I wish we had the curve up, right? But just where I can see my appreciation going up exponentially and I can see my principal reduction going down exponentially. And that gap between the two is why we do all this. It's the power of compound interests. And Matt's been able to do this, right? In like a high price point market. It is not like Knoxville. This is a market where the price points are high and still been able to build some wealth through real estate. Matt, this was fantastic. The comments have been very complimentary about what they got out of it. I loved hearing some people say this gave them some clarity on exactly what was happening in their business. Appreciate your time, man. What's your favorite thing about being a realtor? We're gonna end on this.
I think um, when I was in a W-2, my last W-2 job, I very much felt like my future was much less self-determined, right? We have good years, we have bad years, we have things that we want to accomplish and we miss them. We have years that feel like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. I never thought I was going to be able to do this. But in the W-2 kind of, Groundhog Day scenario, I just did not feel much self-determination. I felt like my future was in kind of somebody else's hands. So my favorite thing about it is at least increased a level of, self-control, self-determination, kind of determining my future for sure.
I love hearing that. Matt, thank you so much for spending time with us today. We appreciate you. Um, if you're in the Southeast, just going to throw this out here. We are hosting a regional rally for our brokerage April 8th. So Rob Chavez is going to be there. Lauren Hammond on this call will be there. It's going to be a full day of real estate training. We're going to talk about every aspect of the business, right? And things you might be doing, talking about building levers of your business, some of these tactics, whether that's commercial or business brokerage, or just things you could be referring people or adding value, right, to the people that know, like, and trust you. Yep. April 8th, regional rally, Knoxville. If you're curious about it, hit us up. But it is going to be an incredible day with a ton of great content. If you're haven't been to an event before like that, check one out. If it's not here, look at something local. Go get out there, go network and talk with other agents. It's been so helpful in my business, like building relationships with other agents, right? Ripping off and duplicating and borrowing. Matt, thank you so much, man. Let's go take
My
some
pleasure.
territory this Tuesday.